Welcome to the Tim Booker channel. Wisdom is worth spreading. Wishing you a pleasant listening experience. In this episode, we are going to talk about a book called The Box. It is a business history book about shipping containers. You might ask, isn't a shipping container just a large metal box? What's so technologically significant about it? How does it relate to changing the world? Well, shipping containers have directly driven global specialization and trade. Let's take the example of an iPhone. Its core components come from the United States, the camera and chips are produced in Japan and South Korea, the battery is manufactured by Chinese companies, and finally, workers at Foxconn assemble it. Only through this process can you buy a fully formed phone. You may be familiar with this process, but have you ever considered that it is all made possible because shipping containers save time and significantly reduce costs by eliminating the need to move goods around constantly? Without the cost-effective transport enabled by shipping containers, even transporting goods across half a country would be unaffordable, let alone shipping them across oceans. Let's say a product is sold for $100, and $25 of that is the shipping cost. With shipping containers, the cost of transporting goods for humanity has been reduced by over 90%. Global specialization has become possible, and resources are allocated and flow globally. Americans can enjoy Brazilian beef, and Europeans can use smartphones produced in China. China has joined the global value chain through globalization. From this, you can see that a shipping container is not just an ordinary metal box. It has changed the world's economic and political landscape and, to some extent, the face of human wealth. The author of this book, Mark Levinson, is a renowned American economist and best-selling author. Starting with the seemingly unremarkable object of a shipping container, he shows us a business miracle. Next, I will introduce this book to you in two parts. First, how the shipping container was invented. Through this process, you will see that innovation is not just about single breakthroughs, systematic innovation is the true innovation. Second, how shipping containers were promoted and applied globally. We will see that technological complexity is not the key factor influencing innovation. The key to innovation lies in application. Let's start with the first part. How was the shipping container invented? The person who invented the shipping container is called McLean, an American. People call him the father of the shipping container, but to be more precise, McLean was not the first person to invent it. Decades after people started using shipping containers, McLean began using them. You might find it strange that something that had already been invented for decades didn't have much technological significance. So why did it become a world-changing invention in McLean's hands? That's where McLean's brilliance comes in. Let's go into the details of the story. McLean's first job was as a truck driver, and later he started his own freight company. He had a natural talent for business. We know that cost saving is a crucial aspect of business competition. The more costs you can save, the lower your product or service prices can be. McLean excelled in this area. While other trucks were still using gasoline, he converted all his trucks to diesel. And to save on fuel costs, his drivers had to refuel at specific gas stations to get discounts. Even more surprisingly, the walls of their truck trailers were corrugated instead of smooth because he heard that corrugated walls could reduce wind resistance and save on fuel costs. You see, McLean was a person with business acumen and a knack for cost cutting. By 1940, with the backdrop of World War II, domestic production and transportation logistics in the United States began to flourish. His transportation company prospered, and by the end of the war, McLean's company had become one of the largest transportation companies in the United States, ranking third in after-tax income in the industry. It was a great success. But as the business grew, McLean encountered a bottleneck. The highways at that time were heavily congested, which posed a significant problem for his transportation business. Imagine, a businessman who could reduce fuel costs by reducing wind resistance couldn't tolerate trucks being stuck for hours or even days. So McLean came up with the idea of using sea transport directly and decided to build his own port. He planned to load the truck trailers onto ships and have trucks on the other side pick up the trailers. Now, you might think that this was his innovation, but it wasn't. Many companies had tried this approach before, but they used scattered containers, and the port ships delivered goods to whoever paid for them. However, McLean proposed building his own port. Later, McLean discovered that by directly loading large metal boxes onto ships and stacking them, he could transport more goods at once. This is when the model transformed into a shipping container. But you might wonder, is this innovation? As we mentioned earlier, the method of using shipping containers to transport goods had been in operation for decades. So where was McLean's innovation? In fact, even though it was his first attempt, he built a system. McLean recognized that the fundamental business of the shipping industry was not navigation but cargo transportation. To reduce freight costs, it required more than just individual metal boxes, it needed an entirely new method of handling goods. This system included ports, cargo ships, cranes, trucks, and even changes in the shipper's operating procedures. This understanding was far more advanced than that of his industry peers at the time. So his contribution did not lie in the use of shipping containers but in changing the entire operational mode of the freight industry. Once McLean completed this system, he conducted a trial. If he transported beer using bulk shipping, it would go through several stages, from the factory, loaded onto trucks, unloaded at the port, loaded onto ships, unloaded at the destination port, and loaded onto trucks again. At that time, the freight cost per ton of beer was $4. But if he used shipping containers, he could directly load the beer from the brewery into containers and ship them to the destination port. The cost would be reduced to 20 cents, saving 95% of the shipping cost. This meant a tremendous new opportunity for the shipping industry had arrived. In order to enter the shipping industry, McLean acquired a company called Atlantic Container Line. Now that he had discovered this new opportunity in the shipping industry, one company was not enough. He felt the need to acquire the parent company of that company and directly monopolize the shipping industry in the Atlantic region. His ambition was immense. However, as he pushed forward with this endeavor, he encountered increasingly significant problems. Financing was an issue, equipment frequently broke down, and many people even stole shipping containers and used them as houses. In simple terms, although he had optimized his own system, the surrounding social system hadn't caught up with his pace. So in the first few years, McLean never expected his company to be unprofitable. But he kept pushing forward, using various cost-cutting measures while working on improving the system. Finally, he managed to hold on until a turning point was reached. Around 1967, during the Vietnam War, there was a need to transport a large amount of goods from the United States to Asia. Efficiency became crucial in the context of the war, so the U.S. government focused on optimizing logistics. Eventually, they found the best way to utilize shipping containers through the so-called 3C principle, one container for one type of cargo and one destination. The English words for these three terms all start with C, hence the name 3C principle. After repeated trials, this method proved to be the most effective. This was the turning point for McLean. In the previous year, his company had been experiencing losses, but in the following year, they earned $450 million from the U.S. Department of Defense. This marked the true beginning of the era of prosperity for shipping containers. From this process, we can see that the journey from inventing an innovative product to its widespread application is often a lengthy one. In this process, the first mover may not live to see the day of its breakthrough or reap its rewards. McLean was relatively fortunate in this regard. The phenomenon of the first person to try something new often facing difficulties is a common challenge faced by many innovators in reality. This also answers the initial question of why shipping containers became a new invention only when they were in the hands of McLean. In the real world, a new invention is actually a systematic engineering project. The value of a product lies not in what it is, but in how it is used. For a highly automated, low-cost, and low-complexity goods transportation system, shipping containers are essential, but they are just one crucial component of the system. The real challenge lies in building and maintaining this system's stability, and McLean was the first to see this direction, take action, and achieve success. Without him, shipping containers would still be regarded as ordinary metal boxes for cargo. It was McLean who maximized the effectiveness of shipping containers, which is why he is regarded as the inventor of the shipping container. To summarize, in this section, we discussed the invention process of shipping containers, how McLean discovered their utility, and how he developed them from individual boxes into a revolutionary freight system. We can see that innovation is not simply creating a single product, it is a systematic engineering project. As we mentioned earlier, McLean began using shipping containers in his own transportation business and built a complete supporting system. However, did this new invention spread quickly? Not at all. The story of shipping containers had just begun, and like all great innovations, it disrupted the fate of all practitioners in the industry, with increasingly significant impact and unexpected results. Next, let me talk about the evolution of shipping containers and the impact they have had on the world. This is our second section. In the previous section, we discussed the entrepreneurial story of McLean. After struggling for many years, he finally turned his business around. McLean's company had 31 container ships at the time, and the revenue increased significantly. The industry suddenly became popular, and competitors started entering the market as it heated up. Every time a new shipping route was opened, several competitors would emerge. The carrying capacity on the largest international routes increased 14 times in 6 years. Before 1966, there were only a few containers in circulation between the United States and Europe, but by 1974, 1 million containers were being transported. The increase in the shipping industry's carrying capacity far exceeded the demand, leading to price wars within the industry. While price wars were not uncommon in various industries, they had a significant impact when it came to container shipping. Before the widespread use of shipping containers, if ship owners felt that business was not good, they could let the ships remain stationary for a few days with minimal costs. However, even if container ships were not in operation, they incurred high costs. Companies had to borrow money to expand, and the ships and container ports were purchased with borrowed funds. They had to pay interest even if the ships were not moving. Combined with intense competition and soaring oil prices, it didn't take long for the entire maritime transport system's prices to collapse. Shipping companies suffered heavy losses. The Financial Times even claimed that the revolutionary impact of container shipping was nearing its end. But Mark Levinson argued that the Financial Times was wrong and that the revolutionary impact of containers was just beginning. I summarize these impacts into 3 aspects. Containers brought about an industrial revolution in the shipping industry, brought significant changes to the livelihoods of industry practitioners, and profoundly transformed the geopolitical and economic landscape of the world. Let's discuss these in detail. First, containers brought about an industrial revolution in the shipping industry. Traditional classical economics has always assumed zero transportation costs. From economist David Ricardo to the 1990s, transportation costs were not a focus of mainstream economists. For example, Ricardo's theory suggested that Portugal and England could each produce wine and cotton, respectively, with a comparative advantage and then trade with each other. The theory seemed plausible, but the implementation was not so simple. If transportation costs were too high, it would be practically impossible. In reality, freight costs were very high before 1956. Shipping goods by ship was a complex process. Just think about it, the cargo had to be individually loaded onto trucks from factories, unloaded one by one at the port, registered, and placed in a transit warehouse next to the port. When a ship was ready, everything had to be counted again before the dockworkers loaded them onto the ship. The whole process left the docks in a mess, with cardboard boxes and garbage everywhere. The entire port was basically chaotic. To reduce freight costs, factories naturally wanted to be closer to the ports. As a result, various types of factories gathered around the ports. The entire freight industry required a lot of manpower, so residential areas were needed as well. Dockworkers and industry practitioners preferred to live nearby, leading to congestion around the ports. The shipping industry exhibited a slow and sluggish atmosphere. Efficiency naturally wouldn't be high in congested areas. For example, at that time, if a pharmaceutical company wanted to transport a truckload of drugs from the Midwest of the United States to an inland city in Europe, they would have to spend around $2,400. This money would be consumed in various stages of the journey, including truck transportation, warehouse management at the port, insurance by shipping companies, and more. Each stage incurred costs, and in the end, half of the transportation cost was wasted at the port. However, that changed with the advent of shipping containers. Their characteristic is standardization and systemization. First, the size of containers is uniform. Almost all shipping companies globally use compatible containers. Whether it's trucks, trains, ports, or ships, they can freely load and unload containers. The handling process relies mainly on cranes, and each container carries only one type of product, eliminating the need for sorting. This significantly increases efficiency and lowers costs. With improved efficiency, factories no longer need to be built around the ports. Workers don't have to live near the ports either. You can see that the entire freight transportation industry has transformed from a slow state to an efficient one. This brought about changes in the operating methods within the shipping industry and the external environment. This is the tremendous change brought about by shipping containers. Secondly, containers brought about significant changes in the livelihoods of industry practitioners within the shipping industry. Just now, we talked about how shipping containers revolutionized the entire transportation process in the freight industry. Naturally, the work status of industry practitioners also underwent significant changes. For example, dock workers used to lead very difficult lives. You can imagine, handling goods weighing dozens of kilograms per bag, including large wooden materials and metal equipment that had to be manually loaded onto ships. Many times, after a day's work, they couldn't even stand up straight due to back strain. Not only was the physical labor exhausting, but the income was also low, and there was little social status. They gathered in the shantytowns around the docks, and their work was mostly temporary. Consequently, they developed their own close-knit culture. Unity was beneficial for the dock workers as it protected them from exploitation by employers and safeguarded their collective interests. However, this also hindered the progress of innovative products like shipping containers to some extent because, from the perspective of dock workers, the introduction of containers meant taking away their jobs. Although their work was physically demanding, it was still a source of employment. Getting such demanding work was not an easy task either. For instance, every morning, these workers had to compete for jobs. Regular workers had to bribe the supervisors to secure work. It's evident that union leaders were the beneficiaries in this scenario, protecting their own interests and finding ways to disrupt the innovative activities of capitalists. For example, even before the widespread use of shipping containers, some people had considered using centralized cargo transportation to reduce the costs of port handling and transportation. Initially, they used something called pallets, which were wooden platforms on which multiple goods were placed and transported to the docks. Then, cargo nets were used to load the goods onto ships and place them in the ship's hold. This method indeed saved a lot of costs. However, the dock workers resisted because it meant taking away their jobs. So, they came up with their own version of pallets. They dismantled the original pallets and had the workers manually load them onto ships. Consequently, the use of pallets as a tool failed to improve efficiency, and the implementation of shipping containers faced significant resistance from dock workers at the beginning. However, as the mechanization of ports gradually took place, the dock workers emerged to negotiate with capitalists, demanding a share of the profits. This broke through the barrier posed by the dock workers. Of course, with the introduction of mechanization, new job positions were created. Manual labor for handling goods transformed into technical jobs operating machines. The former dock workers were able to lead decent lives. This is also one of the uncertainties brought about by new technologies. Old divisions of labor are replaced, and new divisions of labor are created. As you can see, the advent of shipping containers changed the fate of practitioners in the shipping industry. Lastly, shipping containers brought about significant changes in the global economic and geopolitical landscape. They greatly facilitated the process of globalization. Globalization is not a new concept. The ancient Silk Road in China was, in fact, a product of globalization. However, at that time, only lightweight goods such as silk and ceramics could be transported on a global scale. The world was in a similar state where only relatively lightweight items could circulate in the global market. But with the widespread use of shipping containers, the cost of transporting goods decreased, enabling the circulation of bulk commodities on a global scale. This led to changes in the economic landscape of many countries. For instance, resource-scarce countries could conveniently import goods and further process them using their own labor force. Coastal countries like Japan and Singapore largely rose to prominence through the power of globalization. The United States and China also benefited from the division of labor in globalization. For the manufacturing industry, the emergence of shipping containers introduced a completely new mode of production. For example, Toyota has created a model called JustInTime Production. Toyota requires many raw materials, which are ordered and delivered as needed. Trucks from upstream suppliers arrive at the factory and unload containers directly onto the production line. This significantly improves operational efficiency and fundamentally changes the production process. As a result, Toyota has gained strong competitiveness in the market in Japan. The introduction of containers has made international transportation cheaper and safer, effectively eliminating hidden tariffs in the form of transportation costs. This has made manufacturers in one country more willing to seek lower-priced raw materials in other countries. The whole world has turned into a large factory, with countries cooperating and specializing in different tasks. Manufacturers or retailers at the top of the supply chain have become crucial in this system. Take the example of a Barbie doll. The equipment used to manufacture it comes from Japan and Europe, the hair comes from Japan, the plastic body comes from Taiwan, and the final manufacturing and assembly are done by factories in China. Once completed, it is distributed worldwide. Countless products around the globe form their own supply chains due to the emergence of containers. The global impact brought about by containers was something McLean never anticipated at the beginning. He couldn't have known that his invention would change the fate of thousands of dockworkers and promote global specialization. This is also a major characteristic of innovative products. Once a new product is released, the social impact it generates is unpredictable at the beginning. In summary, in this section, we have discussed the obstacles encountered in the development of containers and their impact on the world. They have changed the fate of many workers in related industries, transformed the production methods in the manufacturing industry, and greatly facilitated global specialization. It is evident that although containers are simple and do not require advanced technology, the changes they bring are no less significant than high-tech products. From this historical account, we can clearly see that the level of technological sophistication is not the main factor in changing productivity. We have covered the entire process of the invention and large-scale application of containers, as well as analyzed their profound impact on industries and the global landscape. Finally, I would like to summarize some insights I shared earlier. First, the level of technological sophistication is not the main factor in changing productivity. Just like containers, although they lack technological complexity, their influence is enormous. Therefore, the key to innovation lies not in what a product is, but in how it is utilized. There is a saying in the field of innovation that the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. We can see many products with tremendous influence, capable of changing the world. In fact, many inventors are not the first ones to manufacture their products. For example, Steve Jobs was not the first to manufacture smartphones. Nokia had been promoting them for many years before him. Similarly, there were already existing products such as steam engines and incubators for babies, which were not technologically challenging. However, when these products were seen by someone in another field and improved upon, they became great products. Therefore, there is no shortage of great innovations around us. What is lacking is the eyes to discover them. Second, innovation is not a single breakthrough process. True disruptive innovation is a systemic engineering that requires the accompanying facilities to keep up in order to maximize its advantages. Taking containers as an example, it took more than a decade from Malcolm McLean's first use of containers to their widespread adoption in the industry. McLean overcame numerous difficulties and experienced a long and painful process, almost going bankrupt in the middle. Real-world innovations often face such predicaments. For example, when the Internet first appeared, Amazon was not the first e-commerce company, and there were many other companies with similar ideas. However, at that time, the supporting infrastructure, such as widespread Internet access, complicated payment methods, and limited Internet speed, had not caught up. As a result, many companies did not survive until the explosive period of e-commerce. Therefore, a single-point innovation may not bring significant breakthroughs. The key is whether it is a systemic innovation. Only systemic innovation can produce disruptive effects. Third, the impact of an innovative product is often unforeseen at the beginning. Malcolm McLean could not have imagined that his invention would change the global trade pattern. He also could not have foreseen that containers would affect the production models of countries like Japan and China. Many products can disrupt industries that were previously unrelated. For example, e-commerce can impact traditional brick-and-mortar businesses because people have started shopping online. Similarly, after the widespread adoption of smartphones, the sales of chewing gum and snacks near supermarket cash registers have declined because people are busy using their phones while waiting in line and no longer buy those small items. Therefore, many innovative products have the intentional or unintentional power to disrupt industries that are unrelated to them. If we only focus on the technological development within our own industry, we may face a crisis. Any innovation in the world can be an opportunity or a crisis. Therefore, while we pay attention to our own industry, we should also keep an eye on innovations happening in other industries that could potentially impact our own. In conclusion, the invention and widespread adoption of shipping containers have had a profound impact on the global economy and trade. They have revolutionized the shipping and logistics industry, reduced costs, increased efficiency, and facilitated global specialization. Containers have enabled goods to be transported more easily and securely, allowing manufacturers to source materials and components from different parts of the world. This has led to the emergence of global supply chains and changed the dynamics of various industries. The story of containers teaches us valuable lessons about innovation. Technological complexity is not always the determining factor in driving productivity and change. Simple inventions, when utilized effectively, can have a significant impact. Innovation is not just a single breakthrough, it often requires a systemic approach and the development of supporting infrastructure to fully realize its potential. Moreover, the impact of an innovative product may extend beyond its immediate industry, affecting unrelated sectors and creating both opportunities and challenges. As we navigate the rapidly changing world of innovation, it is crucial to remain open-minded, observe developments in various fields, and adapt to the evolving landscape. By understanding the lessons from historical innovations like shipping containers, we can better prepare ourselves to embrace and leverage emerging technologies and disruptions in a wide range of industries. Finally, an excellent innovator, regardless of success or failure, as long as they have made contributions, will be recognized by the entire industry. Every innovator, when exploring new fields, faces great risks and uncertainties. Take McLean, for example. He later sold his shipping company and made several entrepreneurial attempts, but none of them were successful. In the end, he accumulated a large amount of debt and went bankrupt in his later years, ending in failure. However, people in the shipping industry still regard him as the father of containers. When he passed away, all the ships in the industry sounded their horns simultaneously as a sign of respect for him. Therefore, for an innovator, as long as they have made contributions to the entire industry, whether they succeed or fail, we should maintain a sense of respect for them. That concludes the content of this issue. Congratulations on finishing another book. Thank you for your support and attention. Please subscribe to the Tim Booker channel, like, and share it with your family and friends. Wisdom is worth spreading to create a better future. Thank you, and goodbye.